Alright, buckle up expeditioners, because today we're diving deep into a story that's sunk its teeth into our imaginations for centuries. We're talking about a name that sends a shiver down your spine. Dracula. But here's the thing. The caped, blood-sucking count you see in movies, he's just the tip of the iceberg, or maybe the tip of the steak. The real story, the true history, is far more complex, far more brutal, and honestly, far more fascinating. We're on the hunt for the man behind the monster, a Romanian prince named Vlad III, better known as Vlad the Impaler. This isn't just a campfire tale, folks. Vlad was a real ruler, a warlord who carved out a kingdom in 15th century Wallachia, a land constantly caught between massive empires. His methods were, shall we say, extreme. He wasn't just fighting for his throne, he was fighting for the very survival of his people. But did his brutal tactics make him a monster, a savior, or something else entirely? That's the mystery we're here to unravel. We need to peel back the layers of legend, myth, and outright horror to find the historical truth. So how did this medieval prince become the world's most famous vampire? It's a journey through bloody battlefields, whispered conspiracies, and the dark corners of folklore. We'll explore his life, his wars, and the terrifying reputation that preceded him like a death knell. Was he merely a product of a violent age, or was there something more, something darker, lurking beneath the surface? Some say he was a patriot, a hero who defended Christendom. Others paint him as a bloodthirsty tyrant. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the tangled, thorny middle. Our expedition takes us to the heart of Eastern Europe, to ancient castles perched on misty mountaintops, and into dusty archives that hold centuries-old secrets. We're going to look at the evidence, the stories passed down through generations, and even some truly bizarre legends. Was Vlad connected to secret societies? Did people genuinely believe he was immortal, long before Bram Stoker picked up his pen? Get ready, because the story of Vlad the Impaler is a wild ride, and it's one that continues to captivate and terrify us to this day. Let's go find some answers. To understand the man Vlad became, we have to go back to the beginning, to his early life, which was anything but a fairy tale. Born around 1431 in Transylvania, a region steeped in superstition and conflict, Vlad III was the son of Vlad II Dracula. Now, that name Dracula is important. It wasn't a spooky nickname. It meant the dragon. His father was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order dedicated to defending Christian Europe against the expanding Ottoman Empire. So, from birth, Vlad was thrust into a world of crusades, political intrigue, and constant warfare. Life as a young prince in Wallachia, a small principality nestled between Hungary and the mighty Ottoman Empire, was precarious. Power shifted like sand through your fingers. To secure alliances and prove loyalty, young Vlad and his younger brother Radu were sent as political hostages to the Ottoman court, under Sultan Murad II. Imagine that, just boys, held captive by their father's powerful enemy. These weren't luxurious golden cages. These were years spent learning the ways of a formidable foe, witnessing their power, their ruthlessness, and likely their methods of control firsthand. This experience undoubtedly left deep scars and shaped his worldview profoundly. Think about the psychological impact. Living under the constant threat of death, far from home, seeing firsthand the might of the empire he would one day fight. It's said he developed a deep-seated hatred for the Ottomans during this time, but also a grudging respect for their military organization and their unwavering resolve. He learned their language, their customs, and most importantly, their strategies. These formative years in captivity weren't just about survival. They were an education in power, cruelty, and the harsh realities of 15th century geopolitics. This wasn't a childhood, it was a crucible. His father, Vlad Dracula, eventually fell victim to political machinations, assassinated by rival boyars, the local nobles. Vlad's older brother, Mircea, was reportedly blinded and buried alive. This brutal family history, coupled with his own harsh upbringing as a hostage, fueled a burning desire for revenge and a determination to reclaim his birthright. He wasn't just fighting for a throne, he was fighting to restore his family's honor and to ensure he would never be powerless again. The stage was set for a ruler who would stop at nothing to secure his land and his authority. Vlad's path to becoming voivoda, or prince of Wallachia, was a bloody and turbulent one. He didn't just inherit the throne. He had to fight for it, multiple times in fact. The region was a hornet's nest of competing factions, treacherous nobles known as boyars, and the ever-present threat of Ottoman or Hungarian intervention. His first taste of rule was brief, but he was a quick learner. He understood that to hold on to power in such a volatile land, he needed to project an image of absolute strength and unwavering, even terrifying, resolve. This wasn't a time for gentle persuasion. It was a time for iron will. Once he finally secured his grip on Wallachia for a more significant period, starting around 1456, Vlad set about consolidating his power with a ruthless efficiency that shocked even his contemporaries. He had a particular disdain for the disloyal boyars, whom he blamed for the instability of the region and the death of his father and brother. He knew they were a constant threat, always ready to switch allegiances for personal gain. So, he decided to make an example of them, one that no one would ever forget. This is where his infamous method of punishment comes into play. Impalement. Now let's be clear. Impalement is a horrific, agonizing way to die. It involves a sharpened stake, often not too sharp to ensure a slower death, being forced through the victim's body. Vlad didn't invent it, but he certainly perfected its use as a tool of psychological warfare and state control. He used it against foreign enemies, common criminals, and yes, those disloyal nobles. Stories abound of him inviting hundreds of boyars to a feast, only to have them seized and impaled outside his castle. He wanted to send a clear message: treason and corruption would not be tolerated. His justice was swift, brutal, and very, very public. But why this particular method? It wasn't just about cruelty for cruelty's sake, though his enemies would certainly paint it that way. Impalement was a spectacle. It was designed to inspire terror and obedience. A field of impaled bodies, a forest of the impaled as it was sometimes called, was a powerful deterrent to anyone thinking of challenging his authority or invading his lands. He aimed to create an almost supernatural fear around himself, a reputation so fearsome that it would do some of the fighting for him. In a brutal age, he used brutal means to forge a semblance of order and security for his people, at least as he saw it. While Vlad's methods were undeniably savage, to many of his own people and some in Christian Europe, he was seen in a different light. He wasn't just a tyrant, he was a bulwark, a fierce defender of Wallachia, and by extension, Christendom against the relentless expansion of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were a superpower of the age, constantly pushing their borders deeper into Europe. Wallachia was on the front line, a small Christian principality facing an overwhelming force. Vlad knew he couldn't match the Ottomans in sheer numbers or resources. He had to be smarter, more ruthless, and more terrifying. His campaigns against the Ottomans were legendary, marked by guerrilla tactics, scorched earth policies, and acts of shocking brutality designed to demoralize his enemies. One of his most famous or infamous acts was the night attack in 1462. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, led a massive army into Wallachia to depose Vlad. Outnumbered, Vlad launched a daring nighttime raid on the Sultan's camp, aiming to assassinate Mehmed himself. While he didn't succeed in killing the Sultan, the attack caused chaos and fear within the Ottoman ranks, showcasing Vlad's audacity and military cunning. Following the night attack, as Mehmed's army advanced, they were met with a truly horrifying sight. A vast forest of thousands of impaled Ottoman soldiers and Bulgarian collaborators stretching for miles. Reports claim there were as many as 20,000 bodies. The psychological impact on the Ottoman troops was immense. Even the battle-hardened Sultan was reportedly sickened and shaken by the gruesome display. It was a stark warning. This is what awaits those who invade Vlad's land. While it didn't stop the Ottoman campaign entirely, it certainly contributed to their eventual withdrawal and cemented Vlad's fearsome reputation. So, was he a hero or a villain? It really depends on whose perspective you take. To the Turks, he was Kazikli Voivoda, the Impaler Prince, a monster. To many Wallachians, struggling for survival, he was a harsh but necessary leader, a protector who kept the wolves at bay, even if he was a wolf himself. Some Western European chronicles of the time, particularly those from areas threatened by Ottoman expansion, even portrayed him, if not as a saint, then as a formidable, albeit brutal champion of the Christian cause. His legacy, even then, was being forged in these conflicting narratives of terror and defense. Alright, let's tackle the elephant in the room, or perhaps the bat in the belfry. How did Vlad the Impaler, a 15th century Romanian prince, become Count Dracula, the most iconic vampire in literary history? The transformation is largely thanks to one man, Irish author Bram Stoker, and his 1897 novel, Dracula. Stoker never actually visited Romania. He did his research in libraries in Britain, poring over history books and folklore collections. He stumbled upon the name Dracula and some vague, often sensationalized accounts of a cruel Wallachian voivode. The name itself, Dracula, as we mentioned, originally meant son of the dragon, referring to his father's membership in the Order of the Dragon. However, in modern Romanian, Drac can also mean devil. This linguistic quirk, combined with the German pamphlets of the time that sensationalized Vlad's cruelty, often for political reasons, provided Stoker with a suitably ominous-sounding name and a backstory hinting at immense evil. Stoker took these historical fragments, mixed them with existing vampire folklore from Eastern Europe, and created his immortal anti-hero. He borrowed the name and a sliver of the reputation for cruelty, but little else. The historical Vlad was not, by any account, a vampire. There are no contemporary records suggesting he drank blood, feared garlic, or slept in coffins. These are all tropes of vampire fiction that Stoker masterfully wove into his narrative. Vlad was a military leader, a politician, and a Christian prince, albeit a ruthless one. His monstrosity lay in his very real, very human capacity for extreme violence in the pursuit of his goals, not in supernatural bloodlust. He impaled his enemies. He didn't bite their necks. The connection is largely one of name and a shared reputation for terror, not shared characteristics. It's important to remember that Stoker's Dracula is a work of fiction, a gothic horror masterpiece that tapped into Victorian anxieties about foreignness, sexuality, and the unknown. While Vlad III provided a fascinatingly grim historical seed, the character of Count Dracula grew into something entirely different, a creature of the night imbued with supernatural powers and an eternal curse. So, when you think of Dracula, it's crucial to distinguish between the literary vampire, a product of Stoker's imagination, and Vlad the Impaler, the complex, brutal, and very real historical figure who fought for his survival in a savage world. We've touched on Vlad's father being part of the Order of the Dragon, but let's delve a little deeper into this, because secret societies and powerful, shadowy organizations always add a layer of intrigue, don't they? The Order of the Dragon, or Societas Draconistarum, was very real. It was founded in 1408 by Sigismund, who was then King of Hungary and later Holy Roman Emperor. Its primary goal was to defend the cross and fight the enemies of Christianity, particularly the Ottoman Turks. This wasn't some mystical cult, it was a monarchical chivalric order, a bit like the Knights Templar or the Knights Hospitaller, but with a specific Eastern European focus. Vlad II, Vlad the Impaler's father, was inducted into the order around 1431, the same year Vlad III was likely born. This is why he earned the cognomen Dracul, meaning the dragon. His son, Vlad III, would then be known as Dracula, which is son of the dragon. So the connection to this powerful order was right there in his name, a constant reminder of his family's pledge and his inherited duty. Membership in the order signified prestige, a commitment to a cause, and access to a network of powerful European rulers and nobles. It placed the Wallachian ruling family firmly within the sphere of Christian defense against the Ottomans. Now, were there other, more mysterious secret societies or connections whispered about in relation to Vlad? This is where history gets a bit murkier, and speculation often fills the gaps. Given the turbulent times, the constant political maneuvering, and the esoteric symbolism sometimes associated with chivalric orders, it's not surprising that legends might arise. Some theories, often found in less academic circles, try to link Vlad to more occult or esoteric traditions, perhaps drawing on the devil connotation of Drac or the general air of mystery surrounding his brutal reign and Transylvanian origins. However, solid historical evidence for Vlad's involvement in secret societies beyond the Order of the Dragon is scarce, if not non-existent. The Order of the Dragon itself, while having a cool name and an impressive emblem, a dragon encircling a cross, was a known entity with a clear political and military agenda. The real secret might simply be the complex web of alliances, betrayals, and power plays that characterized the era. Vlad was a master manipulator and a cunning strategist. He likely navigated these networks with skill, but whether this involved clandestine, oath-bound societies beyond the chivalric order of his father remains a tantalizing but largely unproven part of his legend. This is where things get really interesting, folks. The whispers of immortality. Long before Bram Stoker turned Vlad into a creature of the eternal night, there were already strange tales and a certain mystique surrounding him, hinting at something beyond the mortal. Of course, the idea of a vampire is the ultimate form of dark immortality, but were there other, perhaps less defined legends about Vlad cheating death or possessing an unnatural lifespan or resilience? This is where folklore and historical ambiguity often intertwine to create compelling mysteries. One source of these immortality myths might stem from the sheer terror he inspired. A man who could command such fear, who could perform such brutal acts and seemingly get away with them, might appear almost superhuman to his contemporaries. His ability to survive numerous attempts on his life, his multiple reigns, he lost and regained his throne, and his relentless energy in warfare could have contributed to an aura of invincibility. When a figure is larger than life, legends tend to follow, and sometimes those legends take a turn towards the supernatural. People might whisper, how can one man do all this and still stand? Then there's the mystery surrounding his death and burial. Vlad III was killed in battle against the Ottomans around 1476 or 1477. The exact circumstances are debated. Some accounts say he was assassinated by disloyal boyars, others that he was killed by Turks, perhaps even mistaken for one by his own men due to wearing Ottoman disguise during a fierce battle. His head was reportedly cut off and sent to Constantinople, preserved in honey, as proof of his demise for Sultan Mehmed II. But what about his body? This is where the stories diverge and the legends begin to take root. His supposed burial site is at Snagov Monastery, an island monastery near Bucharest. However, excavations there in the 1930s found a tomb that some associate with Vlad, but the remains were debated, and some say the crypt was empty or contained animal bones or the remains of someone else. This uncertainty about his final resting place fuels speculation. If his body isn't definitively found, could he have somehow survived? Or, as some local folklore might suggest, does his spirit still wander, restless and powerful? This ambiguity is fertile ground for tales of undeath or a hidden, unacknowledged continuation of his existence, paving the way for later vampire connections. Beyond the grand narratives of war and vampirism, Vlad the Impaler's story is peppered with smaller, stranger tales, anecdotes that paint a vivid picture of his character and the fear he commanded. These stories, whether entirely true or embellished over time, contribute to his complex and often contradictory legacy. They often highlight his obsession with order, his brutal sense of justice, and his almost cunning, trickster-like intelligence when dealing with his enemies, or even his own people. These are the kinds of stories that make a legend stick. One famous tale tells of a golden cup Vlad placed in the central square of his capital, Targovist. Anyone could drink from it, but it was never to be stolen. During his entire reign, so the story goes, the cup remained untouched, despite being made of precious metal and left unguarded. This was meant to demonstrate the absolute honesty and order he had instilled in Wallachia through his harsh laws. Steal the cup, and you faced certain agonizing death by impalement. It's a powerful image of a society held in check by fear, but also, perhaps, by a grudging respect for the law. Another story, illustrating his grim humor and intolerance for dishonesty, involves two traveling monks. Vlad invited them to his court and asked them their opinion of his rule. One monk, fearing for his life, praised Vlad lavishly, calling him a just and wise ruler. The other monk, more honest or perhaps more foolish, condemned Vlad for his cruelty and the suffering he inflicted. Vlad, according to the legend, rewarded the honest monk for his truthfulness, though some versions say he impaled him anyway for his audacity, and impaled the flattering monk for his dishonesty and cowardice. The message? Vlad valued truth, even if it was unpleasant. Then there are the tales of him dining amongst the impaled, supposedly unfazed by the screams and stench of the dying. German pamphlets, which were keen to portray him as a monster for political reasons, spread these stories widely. They depicted him dipping his bread in the blood of his victims, a detail that, while likely propaganda, certainly prefigures the blood-drinking vampire myth. Whether he actually did this is highly debatable, but the fact that people believed it, or that his enemies wanted others to believe it, speaks volumes about the terrifying image he cultivated. These strange, unsettling anecdotes are part of what keeps his legend alive, a blend of macabre fascination and grim respect. So, after trekking through the blood-soaked battlefields of history and the shadowy corridors of legend, what do we make of Vlad the Impaler? Why, after more than 5 centuries, does this Wallachian prince still hold such a powerful grip on our collective imagination? I think it's because he embodies so many fascinating contradictions. He was a brutal tyrant, yes, but also a national hero to some. A defender of his faith, yet perpetrator of acts that seem almost demonic. A historical figure, yet the inspiration for the king of all monsters. His story is a stark reminder of a brutal age, a time when survival often demanded ruthless measures. But it's more than just a history lesson. Vlad's legacy taps into something deeper. Our fascination with power, with fear, and with the blurred lines between good and evil. He wasn't a simple villain. He was a complex leader operating in an incredibly challenging environment, making choices that were horrific by our standards, but perhaps in his mind necessary for the survival of his people and his land. This complexity makes him endlessly debatable and endlessly compelling. The connection to Dracula, of course, sealed his fate in popular culture. Bram Stoker took a ruthless medieval warlord and transformed him into an immortal creature of the night, ensuring Vlad's name would live on, albeit in a highly fictionalized form. But even without the vampire myth, Vlad's actual deeds were so extreme, so dramatic, that they would likely still be recounted. The Forest of the Impaled is an image so potent, so horrifying, that it transcends simple history and enters the realm of dark legend all on its own. He crafted his own terrifying brand long before Hollywood got involved. Ultimately, Vlad the Impaler remains an enigma. Was he a patriot, a monster, a pragmatist, or all of the above? The truth is likely a tangled web of all these things. He forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of leadership, the price of order, and the darkness that can reside within humanity. His story is a potent cocktail of history, horror, and heroism. And that's why Expeditioners, Vlad III of Wallachia, the real Dracula, continues to haunt our imaginations. A shadowy figure from the past whose chilling legacy refuses to die. There's always more to uncover.